After failing to awaken twice, Hyde had only one final chance, and somehow, he awakened an unknown class with S-rank potential. But there was one problem: no talent, no skills, and a body too weak to survive a real fight. Everyone believed his awakening was completely worthless, until Calamity beasts nearly tore him apart. Then, every attack meant to kill him, forced his body to evolve, and the weakest awakener would become more powerful than even the strongest could ever imagine. The Calamity beasts were tearing him apart. He begged them to stop, but the hungry monsters didn't care. No one came to help. A flash of lightning lit up the room. Suddenly, Hyde felt a strange numbness in his stomach. He threw up a huge puddle of blood. The world grew distant, as if he were sinking underwater. He looked down and saw a giant beast's hand passing clean through his body. Tears flooded his eyes. He cried out for his dead mother. The monster opened its massive jaw wide and lowered it straight toward his head. Suddenly, Hyde's eyes flew open. He sat upright at his desk. His chest was heaving. He was soaked in sweat. The fluorescent lights of the classroom dragged him back to reality. 30 students were staring directly at him. Fu laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, that loser fell asleep again. Another boy mocked his scream. The entire room burst into laughter. Hyde burned with anger and shame. This nightmare haunted him every single day. He gathered his courage and glared at the boy. "Shut up, you buck-teeth bastard!" The class laughed even harder, turning their mockery toward Fu. Fu's ears turned bright red. He stood up instantly, furious. "You worthless piece of—" Suddenly a loud slam cut through the room. Mr. Doran hurled his textbook onto the stand. The class froze. The teacher noticed the shiny awakened ring on Fu's hand. His angry expression instantly eased. Mr. Doran said calmly, "Fu, sit down." Fu smirked and sat back. Then the teacher turned to Hyde and said flatly, "You, out." Hyde blinked in shock. He was the one who— "I don't care," the teacher replied. "Step outside." Hyde stood up slowly. He grabbed his bag. He walked into the empty corridor without another word. The door clicked shut. He leaned his head against the wall and sighed. Fu was an awakened human, while Hyde was completely unawakened. In this world, the teachers always favored the strong. The awakened risked their lives to fight monsters. So, they held all the power. At 3 o'clock, the final bell rang. Hyde left the school immediately and stood by the gates. The sky was filled with dark gray clouds and heavy smoke. Risa ran up to him, completely out of breath. Kai walked slowly behind her, his hands in his pockets. "Was it the nightmare?" Risa asked, searching his face. Hyde nodded once. Kai glanced at him. "You eat anything today?" "I am not hungry," Hyde replied flatly. "That's not what I asked." "I'll eat later." Kai gave a small nod and dropped the subject. He always knew when to give Hyde space. Risa fidgeted with her bag strap nervously. "Today is your birthday," she said. "Do you want to grab food? The 3 of us." Hyde looked past her toward the end of the road. "I will see later," he said. "I have the awakening test." He immediately started walking. Today was his 18th birthday. It was his absolute last chance to awaken. Every human gets a test at 16. If nothing happens, the government gives them 2 more chances, one at 17 and the last at 18. Hyde was a very rare case. He had failed the first 2 tests completely. 10 minutes later, they arrived at the gray concrete awakening station of Area 17. Kai stopped at the corner. He had successfully awakened last year as a 3-star mage. Now, he was already training for an extermination agency. Kai clapped Hyde's shoulder. "I have training now. Meet us at 8, okay?" "I will if I can," Hyde said. Kai walked away. Risa looked at Hyde, feeling nervous for him. "Good luck, Hyde," she said softly. Then she ran to catch up with Kai. Hyde stared at the massive building. His heart beat frantically against his chest. He was terrified, but his hatred for the monsters was stronger than his fear. He took a deep breath and walked inside. This was his last chance. Hyde walked inside the awakening station. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss. The interior was clean and luxurious, with white floors and glowing walls. He stepped inside. A biometric scanner swept over him with a blue light. A small ticket printed out automatically. It read, "Final Assessment, Hyde Volter, August 18th, 2381. A receptionist smiled professionally and bowed. She said, "Right this way, please." She led him down a long corridor. They passed a holographic screen showing the details of the awakening process. Hyde only gave it a quick glance. He had seen it twice before. The receptionist opened a door near the end of the hall. She gestured for him to enter. The room was filled with advanced medical equipment. There was a padded bed in the center, and monitoring machines along the wall. A scanning head hung from the ceiling to track his vitals. The woman said, "Please take off your shirt and lie down. The doctor will be here shortly." Hyde set his bag down. His throat felt completely dry. Anxiety gripped his stomach. This was his absolute last chance. He took off his shirt and stared at the floor. He thought of his mother. It was his third time here, and the government wouldn't give him another shot. He pressed his fingers against the thick scar on his abdomen. 6 years ago, a Calamity beast had broken through their window. His mother was an ordinary human, but she still pushed him behind her to save his life. The door opened, interrupting his thoughts. The doctor walked in, holding a glowing transparent tablet. He gestured to the assistant to begin. Hyde lay back on the bed. The woman attached sensors to his chest and wrists. The doctor sat down and looked at his tablet. "This is your final assessment," the doctor said. "You understand that?" "Yes," Hyde replied. The doctor logged the response. Then he looked directly at Hyde. "One last question. Why do you want to awaken? What is your motive?" Hyde stared at the ceiling, his jaw tightened with pure hatred. Hyde said, "To exterminate every single one of the Calamity beasts." His voice was so cold, so filled with bloodlust, that the doctor froze mid-gesture. The man swallowed hard and cleared his throat. "Right," the doctor said, standing up. "Bring the stone." The assistant stepped out. She returned a minute later with a small tray. Under a transparent cover lay a deep red life stone. It was the size of a finger and glowed intensely like a diamond. Hyde picked it up. It felt lighter than it looked. He put it in his mouth and bit down. The stone shattered instantly like chalk. It had no taste at all. He swallowed it completely. The monitors maintained a steady, quiet rhythm. Hyde focused inward, searching for the warmth of mana. 1 minute passed. Nothing changed. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. One of the monitors emitted a long beep. The doctor quickly silenced it. 4 minutes passed. Hyde's knuckles turned pale as he gripped the bed. Tears filled his eyes. The assistant looked at him with pity. The doctor quietly set his tablet down. "Hyde," the doctor said carefully. "I need you to—" "I know," Hyde interrupted. "I fucking know." He covered his face with his hands. He was furious and heartbroken. He had failed his mother. He had promised to kill those monsters. And now his chances were gone. But deep inside, he refused to give up. He didn't care about the laws or the machines. Suddenly, the assistant gasped. "Doctor, the readings—" The quiet rhythm broke. The monitors began to beep rapidly, flashing massive amounts of data. The scanning head above the bed started rotating fast. The doctor jumped to his feet, staring at his tablet in disbelief. "It's working," the doctor breathed. "The mana is moving." Hyde felt a sudden surge of power, rushing through every single cell in his body. The doctor smiled and handed him the tablet. "Congratulations, Mr. Hyde Volter. You have awakened." Hyde stared at the screen in shock. He had awakened a mysterious class called Infinity. Its potential was S rank, but somehow he had no talent at all. Infinity? Hyde had never heard of such a class. Before he could think, a weird blue holographic screen floated right in front of his eyes. Synchronizing system stats. Congratulations, Universal Adaptation System is now live. Congratulations, Mr. Volter, the receptionist said with a smile. A unique class with S-rank potential is amazing. I'm happy for you. The doctor nodded in agreement. An S-rank potential is very rare. Only 1 in a million gets that. You could even become a captain in an extermination agency. But there is a small problem. Hyde blinked, listening closely. What kind of problem? The doctor coughed. You didn't awaken any talent. Unique classes are strange, so we can't say for sure what this means. This was definitely bad news. A class only shows how a body reacts to mana. But talents are the actual powers. An awakened person without a talent was practically useless. Hyde remained silent, however. Because he was thinking about something else. The floating blue system screen had disappeared, but he knew it was connected to his unique class. The doctor stood up and turned to the receptionist. "Get him registered and give him the status ring." With that, the doctor left the room. The woman told Hyde to wait at the reception and followed him out. Hyde dressed silently and stepped into the corridor. The hallway felt completely different now. The white walls and blue floor lights were the same, but his future had changed. He had a unique class with S-rank potential. He wanted to smile. Awakeners with unique classes were absolute monsters. They fought outside the safety barriers. They constantly appeared on the news. Now, Hyde stood at the same starting line as them. His official profile read, Hyde Volter, Class Infinity, Class Potential S. The infinity sign was a strange name for a class. Hyde walked toward the lobby, his boots clicking softly on the floor. He figured it was a strange side effect of awakening on his third try. Unique didn't always mean strong. Sometimes it just meant abnormal. Still, the S-rank potential filled his chest with joy. He finally had a way into the extermination agencies. He was one step closer to crossing the barriers, one step closer to killing the beasts, and keeping his promise. His hand curled into a fist. Then, there was the system. Hyde remembered reading old pre-Calamity webtoons. Floating blue screens were usually cheat codes for the main character. If this was a real system, maybe he could become strong enough to face a Calamity Lord. The thought was arrogant, but he couldn't let it go. He took a deep breath to test it. System. Nothing happened. Status. Still nothing. He tried every word he could think of. Open system. Menu. Arise. Window. Stats. Inventory. The hallway remained completely silent. There were no blue screens. There were no system alerts. He just heard the faint hum of the building's air conditioner. He felt a bit foolish. Suddenly his name was called. Mr. Hyde Volter? The receptionist stood behind the curved desk, holding a small black box. Hyde walked over to her. "This is your status ring," she said, sliding the box toward him. "Please put it on the middle finger of your left hand." Hyde opened the lid. Inside was a pure black ring that seemed to swallow the light. It felt cool and light as he picked it up. He slid it onto his middle finger. It fit perfectly and looked like an ordinary ring. The woman nodded. "Now, please say Class State out loud." Hyde raised an eyebrow. Class State. A semi-transparent status window projected into the air above the ring. It showed his official government registry for anyone to see. But at the exact same moment, another screen flashed. This one appeared directly inside his head. It was a translucent blue screen, much sharper than the ring's projection. Only Hyde could see it, and it had far more information. Hyde was stunned. He had tried every cliché keyword, but the system actually opened when he used the official phrase. This system wasn't separate from his powers. It was a direct manifestation of his unique class. Two screens hung before him. The ring projected a simple white display, while the blue system screen floated inside his mind. The ring's status window was straightforward. Name, Hyde Volter, Class, Infinity. Current class. Rank, F-Class Evolution. Percentage 0%, Class Potential, S, Talent, None. Talent, Rank, 0 star. But the screen in his mind was far more complex. Universal Adaptation System. The system showed that Hyde was only level 1. His Infinity class was still at F rank and needed 20 levels to evolve. His physical stats were average, but his endurance and willpower were noticeably higher than the rest. He had no skills or spare stat points yet. However, 2 unread notifications were waiting for him. Hyde frowned. Levels, evolution, skills. This wasn't how awakening worked in this world. Awakeners had talents, not skills. And usually, a class only evolved by absorbing more life stones, not by leveling up. The receptionist gently cleared her throat, breaking his thoughts. The white ring projection faded, but the blue system screen remained. "Yes?" Hyde asked. The woman pointed at her terminal, showing his official data. "Your registration is complete," she said. "I need to explain your situation in detail." She paused, looking at the screen. "You have a unique class with S-rank potential. That is amazing. But you did not awaken a talent at all." Hyde remained silent. "A class is just the framework for mana," she explained. Talents are the actual powers, like fire or healing. Without a talent, you can't use active combat abilities. With an F-rank class and 0 talent, you won't be cleared for frontline combat. Your body would break before the beasts do. Fighting them would be suicide. She tried to sound encouraging. You can still work in support divisions like logistics or barrier maintenance. And if a talent manifests later, your S-rank potential means you will grow fast. Hyde forced a polite smile. Thank you for explaining. He turned and walked out of the building. The heavy, polluted air of Area 17 hit his face, but his mind was completely focused on the bottom of his blue screen. 2 unread notifications. He walked down the sidewalk and thought, "Open system messages." The screen shifted, revealing 2 lines of text. System message 01. Universal adaptation. System initialization complete. System message 02. Welcome class Kickstarter pack. Hyde's heart raced. He had always hoped for a strong class and a high-star talent. He never expected a strange system like this. Hesitant, he mentally clicked the first message. The box expanded, revealing text that would change his life forever. Hyde opened the first message. It looked like an email inbox. System message 01. Universal adaptation is system initialization complete. Due to late awakening and absence of talent, host has been selected as a compatible carrier. As a welcome compensation, 1 passive skill has been granted. Claim passive skill? Yes/no. Hyde did not hesitate. He mentally pressed yes. Instantly, a new golden window with bold black text appeared right in front of his eyes. New passive skill. Acquired Adaptive Override, passive. Allows the host to adapt to any form of damage by analyzing the threat and countering it. Counter skills evolve upon exposure to higher variants of the same threat. All adaptations stack permanently. Hyde froze. A woman walking a delivery route passed right through the floating text like a ghost, completely unaware. Hyde read the description again and again. The mechanism was brutally simple. Whenever his body took damage, the system would analyze it and create a permanent counter. Every attack will make me stronger, he realized. Every poison, every blade, every crushing force. If I survive the damage, I will counter it, every single time. A cold grin spread across his face. He thought of the beasts from his nightmare eating his mother's corpse. You took everything from me when I was weak, he thought. Now, the rules have changed. I will kill every last one of you. The panel pulsed gently, displaying a new notification. Adaptive Override requires activation command. Please designate a verbal or mental trigger for the skill. Hyde thought for a moment. He wanted a word that carried real weight. One word to describe taking every wound and making it his own power. He found it. Evolve, Hyde whispered. Activation command registered. Adaptive Override will fully awaken upon host command. Evolve. A thrilling chill ran down his spine. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them to check the second notification. System message 2. Welcome class Kickstarter. Pack, system interface upgrade. Unlocked features, enhanced stat tracking, daily quests now active. System roadmap. Level 5 to system store. Buy weapons, consumables, and artifacts. Level 10 to virtual adaptation space. Controlled simulation for safe training. Hyde studied the roadmap closely. The virtual adaptation space at level 10 would allow him to deliberately take damage and adapt without actually dying. It was the perfect training room. When he closed the messages, the interface updated. The notification count dropped to 0, and a new daily quests tab appeared. The receptionist had told him that, without a talent, he could never fight or evolve his F-rank class. She thought his path was blocked, but the receptionist was wrong. The system was his way out. "Hyde!" a voice called out. Hyde turned and saw Kai jogging toward him, wearing tactical training gear. Kai stopped in his tracks, his eyes immediately landing on the pure black status ring on Hyde's left hand. He looked genuinely thrilled and grinned widely. "You did it," Kai said, laughing. Hyde gave a small nod. Kai stepped forward and slammed his hand down on Hyde's shoulder, then clapped his back twice. He glanced at the result slip in Hyde's hand. "A unique class with S-rank potential? That is so cool. I knew you could do it, man." Hyde noticed that Kai deliberately avoided mentioning the missing talent. He chose to remain silent about it. "The party tonight is on me," Kai said, pulling out his comm device. Go home and get changed. I'll pick up Risa and meet you in an hour. Don't argue. I wasn't going to, Hyde said. Kai grinned, clapped his back one more time, and walked away. As Hyde watched him go, a blue light pulsed at the bottom of his vision. Adaptive override, analysis active, minor blunt force detected. Location, left shoulder, upper back. Source, repeated impact from palm strike. Severity, negligible. System query, initiate adaptation sequence for this damage type. Awaiting command. Hyde stared at the text. The system had cataloged his friend's friendly pat and was already asking to adapt to it. Even a minor impact could trigger his growth. He looked at the prompt at the bottom of the screen. Evolve, Hyde said. Hyde watched the numbers tick up on the screen as he walked home. Adapting, 20%. The percentage moved slowly. Hyde worried this feature would be too slow during a real battle. He entered his apartment building and took the elevator to the 4th floor. The system notification arrived before he could even take off his jacket. He stood in his narrow corridor and stared at the screen in disbelief. Adaptive override, adaptation complete, counter skill. Generated, dermal reinforcement, rank F, passive. Skin density and surface nerve threshold marginally increased. Provides resistance to minor impacts and abrasions. Hyde was stunned. He actually got a passive skill just from Kai clapping him on the back. It was only an F-rank ability, but it proved his system was incredibly powerful. He closed the screen and walked into his small, government-issued apartment. His automated support AI, Cass, pulsed with a soft amber light from its charging dock. Cass said, "Welcome home. Exterior temperature is 14 degrees. Congratulations on your awakening, Hyde." Hyde sat on the table. "Thanks, Cass." He sat in silence for a long time, pressing his thumb against the scar on his stomach. This was his true first step toward his goal. Suddenly, his communicator buzzed on the table. Kai was calling. Hyde didn't answer. Instead, he opened the balcony door and looked down at the street. Kai's sleek dark blue car was parked below. Kai stood by the door with his arms crossed, and Risa stood right beside him. They both looked up and waved. Hyde smiled, went back inside, and quickly changed his clothes. He looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. He wore a simple white shirt and black pants. His sharp jaw, silver hair, and cold blue eyes stared back at him. He looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in years. He tried to smile, but his face felt too stiff from years of grief and anger. He gave up and grabbed his jacket. Hyde said, "Turn off the food unit, Cass." "I'll be back late," Cass replied. "Order confirmed." "Have a good evening, Hyde." Hyde stepped out into the corridor and pulled the heavy door shut. In his haste, his finger accidentally got caught right in the door frame. Hyde froze, expecting intense pain. But to his surprise, he felt absolutely nothing. His finger wasn't bruised or bleeding. His new defensive skill was already working perfectly. Hyde pulled his finger out of the door frame and checked it in the light. It was perfectly fine. He nodded, put on his jacket, and headed downstairs. Kai was waiting in his dark blue car, looking at his comm device. He looked up with a neutral expression, trying not to make a big deal out of the moment. "You actually came down on time," Kai remarked. "I bet myself it would take 2 more calls." "I lost? You bet against me?" Hyde asked. "Get in," Kai replied, unlocking the passenger door. Hyde climbed inside. The car smelled like the same pine air freshener Kai had used since their academy days. Risa sat in the back seat, staring intensely out the window at the industrial drainage infrastructure to avoid awkwardness. "Risa," Kai called. She replied, still looking away. As Kai pulled into the street, Risa immediately stopped looking out the window. She stared straight at the back of Hyde's head. Her fingers nervously worked at the strap of her bag. Without looking away from the road, Kai spoke up. "Just give it to him." "I was going to," Risa protested. "You've been holding it since I picked you up," Kai chuckled. "Can you not?" Risa sighed. "I'm just saying, it would be more efficient to give it to him now," Kai added. "He probably won't hear you later anyway." "Oh my God," Risa surrendered. She reached over the center console and handed Hyde a package wrapped in brown paper with a white ribbon. Hyde took it and opened it without ceremony. Inside were thick, golden, homemade chocolate cookies. The rich aroma of real butter and grain filled the car. Risa began talking at twice her normal speed. "I had the flower already, and since it's your birthday..." I mean, it's no big deal. They're just cookies. The center might be a bit soft because my oven runs hot, so I don't know if... Hyde took a large bite. Risa stopped talking instantly. They are good, Hyde said. They were perfect, soft in the middle with crisp edges. He ate a second one. Really good. Risa cleared her throat, her voice softening. Congratulations on the awakening, Hyde. We both I'm glad it happened. I know how long you've waited. She paused, her tone turning serious. Just, please don't do anything stupid, okay? Be careful. Please. Hyde looked at the cookie. I will be okay. Risa sighed in relief. Suddenly, Kai reached into the door compartment and handed Hyde a matte black card with silver trim. My turn, Kai said. Hyde read the text. Gate Training Facility 7, Area 17. General Access Permit. 2-time entry. A deep thrill resonated within him. The locked doors of his past were finally opening. Kai kept his eyes on the road. You can go in alone. It's an F-rank clearance. They will pair you with an observer for the first run. But you'll have full combat access. Hyde's fingers tightened around the card. Thank you. Thanks a lot, both of you. Don't get sentimental on me, Kai joked, smiling fully. I thought you were about to cry. Look straight and drive, Hyde replied. Risa laughed from the back seat. Suddenly, the world ripped apart. There was no warning. A massive force slammed into the car from the left. The vehicle flipped violently, throwing everything into pure chaos. The window became the sky. The roof hit the asphalt. And then, everything went dead silent. Hyde's ears rang painfully. He forced his body to move, twisting out of his seatbelt. He crawled out through the shattered windshield onto the pavement, coughing up heavy dust. He got to his feet and looked back. The car was completely upside down, steam rising from the engine, and there was blood pooling under the wreckage. His breath caught. Kai, Risa. Kai! Risa! Hyde screamed. He rushed to the car, pressing his hands against the frame, and pushed with all his might. His boots scraped against the ground. His shoulders screamed in pain, but the 400-kilogram vehicle didn't budge. His current stats weren't enough. He let go, chest heaving. He spotted his cracked communicator on the ground. A bright red emergency alert was flashing across the screen. Area 17. Emergency notice. Mana conjuncture. Detected. Sector 17-S. Probability. Gate formation. High evacuate immediately. Emergency units dispatched. Loud air raid sirens began to wail across the district. Hyde looked up toward the intersection 20 meters ahead. The air itself was warping, folding inward like tearing fabric. 11 seconds later, the gate opened with a deafening crash. The atmosphere tore open, revealing a dark, swirling void floating above the road. Suddenly, a low vibration shook the pavement. A terrifying, guttural snarl echoed from the other side of the portal. Hyde swallowed hard, his throat completely dry. Behind him, the car groaned, and the blood kept pooling. His friends were trapped, and the emergency units were nowhere to be found. His jaw tightened. He took a step toward the gate, then another, deep inside his chest, beneath the years of grief and cold fury. A dangerous smile crept onto his face. He wasn't a weak, helpless kid anymore. He was an awakened. Hyde glared at the portal. Come on, bastards! The first Calamity beast pushed through the gate. The black circle warped. As a massive monster forced its way into the world, it slammed onto the asphalt with a heavy crunch. The creature was huge, over 2 meters tall, looking like a cross between a giant reptile and a cat. Jagged glass-like plates covered its lean muscles, glowing with a sickening violet light. Its head was deformed, featuring 6 narrow red eyes arranged across its skull, and its mouth was packed with blade-like teeth. Suddenly, a second beast followed, then a third. They spilled out of the portal like a pack of wolves. The intense mana in the air spiked instantly, causing a painful pressure behind Hyde's eyes. Hyde slowly curled his hands into fists, his nails digging deep into his palms. These were the monsters he had dreamed of killing his entire life. He was always a useless bystander before, but everything was different now. One of the beasts lifted its head, its 6 red eyes locked directly onto Hyde. Hyde stood alone in the middle of the street, in his white shirt and black pants. Behind him, the car remained upside down, with blood pooling on the asphalt. The monster crouched, its breath visible in the heavy air, and then it charged straight at him. Most people would have run away in terror. Instead, Hyde stepped forward with a wide, terrifying smile. Hyde whispered, "Finally." "You're here." He felt no fear. Suddenly his perception sharpened, and the world seemed to slow down. He could see every movement of the monster's muscles. He ran straight toward it. The distance closed instantly. The beast swiped its glowing violet claws low to take his legs off. Hyde jumped, but deliberately mistimed his reaction. The claws slashed his shin. He crashed hard onto the road, bleeding heavily. This was exactly what he wanted. He needed to take serious damage to activate his new power. The blue screen flashed instantly before his eyes. Adaptive override. Analysis active. Physical injury detected. Location, lower leg. Source, mana-imbued claws. Severity, moderate laceration. System query. Initiate adaptation sequence, awaiting command. Hyde smiled through the pain and stood up. He grit his teeth. "Evolve," Hyde commanded. Adapting, 10%. The beast did not slow down. It closed the distance and swung its claws higher, tearing through the air with violet energy. Hyde threw himself sideways. Adapting, 40%. The claws slashed deep into his forearm. Hyde gasped as intense burning pain shot through his body. He hit the ground hard, his vision flashing white as he tasted blood. The beast's shadow fell over him as it prepared to finish him off. Adapting, 60%. The monster lunged. Hyde did not roll away. As the claws came down, he brought his legs up and kicked the beast hard right between its hind legs. The brutal impact made his own legs go completely numb. He screamed in agony, but bit it back. The beast stumbled backward, roaring in surprise and pain. Adapting, 80%. The monster quickly recovered and growled with pure fury. Hyde laughed wildly. It was a crazy, dark sound born from the memory of his mother's death. He forced himself onto his shaking legs, standing firmly between the beast and the overturned car. Hyde screamed, "That all you've got? Come on, bastard. Try harder." Adapting, 100%. Adaptive override, adaptation complete. Counter skill. Generated, abyssal scale, carapace, rank A, active. Manifests dark steel scales across the body in response to lethal threats. Drastically increases physical defense and resists cutting damage. Absorbs and suppresses 50% of all physical damage. An A-rank active skill. Hyde smiled. The monster roared furiously, opening its massive jaws to bite him completely in half. The monster opened its massive jaw wide. Rows of blade-like teeth lined its throat, and its hot breath reeked of rusted metal and rotten meat. It committed its full weight into a lethal lunge. Hyde didn't dodge. He stood his ground, ignoring the sticky blood filling his shoes and the throbbing pain in his forearm. "Show me what you've got," he thought. The beast's jaws slammed down, but before the teeth could tear his chest apart, a cold shiver exploded out of his spine. It felt like molten iron rushing under his skin, splitting it open with the sound of cracking stone. Pure dark steel scales punched through his flesh, sheathing his chest, shoulders, and arms in interlocking armor. The beast bit down hard. Instead of soft flesh, its teeth struck solid metal. A loud metallic clang echoed through the street as sparks flew from the impact. The force pushed Hyde back, his boots digging furrows into the road. But his body remained unbroken. For the first time, the monster froze. All 6 of its red eyes widened in shock. Hyde looked at the teeth trying to saw through his new armor and whispered, "Yeah, that's more like it." Abyssal scale, carapace, active. Damage absorbed, 17%. Pain suppression, 50%. Hyde lifted his black-scaled arms and clamped his hands onto the upper and lower halves of the beast's jaw. The plates along his knuckles sharpened like hammers. He grit his teeth and pulled with everything he had. Muscles screamed. The beast thrashed wildly, gouging trenches into the asphalt. But Hyde poured years of humiliation and rage into his grip. Suddenly a wet pop echoed. A jaw joint snapped. Hyde didn't stop. He gave one final brutal wrench. and the entire lower section of the beast's mouth ripped completely free. He flung the bloody jaw aside. The rest of the monster collapsed into a heap of meat, violet blood splashing across the road. Calamity Beast, Lupine, eliminated. Experience points gained. 50 Hyde stared at the text. His hands now looked like black gauntlets with blunt, ridged claws. The dark scales began crawling up his neck, over his cheeks, and around his temples, leaving only thin slits for his eyes. He felt a deep, cold satisfaction. This is how I get stronger, he thought. Behind the portal, the remaining 11 beasts snarled, shifting on their claws. They fanned out in a crescent, blocking his path to the gate. Hyde stood in the middle, his shirt torn to shreds, his chest wrapped in dark steel. The reek of the monsters triggered his oldest trauma, bringing back the memory of his mother's death. A twisted smile spread across his covered face. "Die," he whispered. "All of you." The nearest wolf creature lunged, aiming straight for his throat. Hyde stepped forward. His right arm moved in a swift black blur, delivering a brutal backhand to the beast's jaw. The impact sounded like shattering stone. The creature's neck snapped at an impossible angle, spinning its body through the air before it crashed hard onto the pavement. The violet lights on its spine instantly went dark. Calamity Beast, Lupine, eliminated. Experience points gained. 50. A stunned silence fell over the street for a fraction of a second. Then, the entire pack howled in fury and swarmed him all at once. The remaining 11 beasts lunged as one, their howls forming a solid wall of sound. Hyde charged straight into them. He slammed his shoulder into the first creature, sending it flying. 3 more immediately swarmed him. One snapped at his legs, another aimed for his eyes, and a third circled to his back. Hyde stopped thinking. He let his body move on pure instinct. His right leg shot out, crushing the throat of the beast below him. Calamity Beast, Lupine, eliminated. Experience points gained. 50. He snapped his left forearm up, letting the high claws scrape uselessly against his dark steel armor. The third monster lunged from the side, sinking its teeth deep into his flank, but his scales flexed and locked like a tank's armor. Abyssal Scale Carapace. Active. Damage absorbed, 31%. And pain suppression, 60%. Hyde grabbed the back of the beast's neck. He squeezed with all his might, until the spine snapped. The lifeless carcass dropped to the ground. Calamity Beast, Lupine, eliminated. Experience points gained. 50. The rest of the pack swarmed him in a violent wave. Claws clanged against his scales, leaving pale streaks. One claw managed to slice his forearm, where the armor hadn't fully thickened. Blood welled up. But the scales instantly surged forward, sealing the wound. "More!" Hyde thought wildly. "Give me more!" His movements were seamless. He smashed his fist into a beast's skull, caving the bone inward. Before it could even fall, he struck it again, relishing the brutal satisfaction. Calamity Beast, Lupine, eliminated. Experience points gained. 50. Another monster raked its claws across his back. Hyde used the forward momentum to seize its leg. With a brutal twist, he tore the limb completely free. The wolf shrieked as violet blood sprayed the air. Hyde stomped on its neck again and again until it went still. Calamity Beast, Lupine, eliminated. Experience points gained. 50. The numbers stacked up, completely meaningless to him now. The black scales kept climbing, fully covering his neck, head, and cheeks. His world became a narrow line of blue vision framed by steel. Across his forehead, the last strip of pale skin vanished. Hard plates converged at the center, pushing outward into 8 jagged, sharp metal spikes. It looked exactly like a crown. Hyde didn't care. All he heard was the satisfying sound of breaking bones and shrieking beasts. He was no longer a helpless bystander watching exterminators on a screen. He was ankle-deep in violet blood. Terrified, one of the beasts tried to run. Hyde chased it down instantly, tackling it to the ground. He mounted its back, placed his hands on either side of its head, and pulled. The spine snapped with a loud crack, and the creature went limp. Calamity Beast, Lupine. Eliminated. Experience points. Gained 50. When the last beast rushed him, The street was already a crude altar of blood and flesh. Chipped plates and dried violet blood covered his armor. He breathed heavily, the heat pulsing under his carapace. The system windows finally updated. Calamity Beast, Lupine, eliminated. Experience points gained, 50, level up, level 1 to 2, or exp, 0 over 700, level up reward added to inventory. Abyssal scale, carapace, stability 69%. Warning, host fatigue levels critical. Hyde exhaled sharply. Reality rushed back. He looked at the overturned car. I need to get them out, he muttered through his helm. Suddenly, sirens and engines echoed through the street. A hover van braked hard near the gate. Extermination troops in dark combat gear hit the ground, their rifles humming to life as targeting lasers locked on. 17 South on site, the squad leader barked into her comm. Multiple F-class beasts down. Repeat, multiple. She stopped dead in her tracks, staring directly at Hyde. He stood amidst a ring of slaughtered monsters, covered head to toe in black armor and crowned with jagged steel. Command, she whispered, her hand trembling on her comm. Visual on an unknown entity. Suspected humanoid Calamity Beast. It appears to be protecting a civilian vehicle. Hyde lifted his head, his cold blue eyes flashing behind the armor plates. Warning, host fatigue limit reached. Abyssal scale, carapace, forced deactivation. The dark armor suddenly cracked along invisible seams. The plates shattered and fell away, exposing his pale, bare skin drenched in sweat and blood. The crown dissolved last. The sudden rush of pain hit him all at once. His knees buckled, and his vision swam. The squad leader gasped, taking a step back. Command, revision. That's not a beast. The unknown entity is human. A human in full-body manifestation. Impossible. Before she could finish, the gate behind them convulsed violently. The dark portal rippled inward, as a massive bone-vibrating growl echoed from the other side. A second wave of monsters was coming. Barrier up, now! The leader screamed. That was the last thing Hyde saw, before his vision went black, and he collapsed onto the blood-stained pavement, completely unconscious. Hyde woke up to the sound of absolute nothingness. The ceiling above him was a flat, unblemished white. He searched it for vent grates or light strips, but found nothing. His mind tried to drag him back to the street, the violet blood and the reek of rot. But there was no weight on his body, and no ringing in his ears. Only a thin hospital sheet covered his bare skin. He moved his fingers, curling them into the stiff fabric. He pushed himself up, his throat feeling completely dry. Hello? Hyde's voice sounded small in the silence. Is anyone here? I'm awake. Only stillness answered. He waited, but the quiet didn't budge. He turned his head slowly. His neck ached, but it moved. To his left was a blank wall. To his right, a seamless sliding door with no handle on his side. There were no windows anywhere. His torso was completely bare, free of bandages or injuries. Only a fully healed scar remained on his left forearm. His heart kicked harder. Kai? Risa? He called out, swallowing hard. Anyone? Suddenly, a soft chime flickered at the top of his vision. The system unfolded. Adaptive override. Post-combat analysis. Force deactivation after extreme fatigue. Location, whole body. Source, stamina. Loss. Severity, increased probability of death. System query, initiate adaptation sequence for this risk type. Awaiting command. He realized he had blacked out because his stamina hit 0. Evolve, Hyde whispered. Adapting, 3%. He clenched his jaw and tried to swing his legs toward the edge of the bed, but nothing happened. There was no resistance. His body simply felt non-existent below his waist. A cold line traced down his spine. He ripped the blanket back. 2 black metal rings circled his ankles. They were sleek, narrow bands of matte metal snug against his skin. Faint blue symbols looped lazily across their surfaces. He tried to wiggle his toes, but his brain's signals were completely blocked. What the... Hyde grit his teeth. He let the blanket fall back. Fear and guilt stabbed his chest. Kai and Risa were trapped in an upside-down car when he went under. They're fine, he muttered to himself. If I'm here, someone pulled us out. They wouldn't leave them. He glared at the door again. "Hey, is anyone out there? Where are my friends?" Silence. A prickle ran across his neck. He scanned the corners of the room and noticed tiny coin-sized circular recesses in the ceiling. 4 cameras, 1 per corner. "Of course," he whispered. "I'm being watched." Since he was trapped, he decided to check his updated stats. He mentally commanded, class state, universal adaptation system. Host, Hyde Volter, age 18, level 2, exp 100/700 class, infinity, class rank, F, evolve, level 1/20, strength 6, agility 5, endurance 10, vitality 8, perception 7, willpower 12, stat points 5. Active skills, abyssal scale, carapace, A, passive skills, dermal reinforcement, F, inventory, S, daily quests. He had 5 unallocated stat points from leveling up, and 2 new tabs. But one question bothered him. Why didn't he have a mana attribute? Even the official status ring didn't show one. As if reading his mind, a small window popped up. Skills do not use mana as a base. Hyde frowned. It was creepy having a system look directly into his thoughts. "Well, fuck that," he muttered. He opened his inventory first. It had 20 slots. 2 were filled, a beginner's sword, and a physical stat doubling potion that lasted 10 minutes. Both were rewards for leveling up. Next, he clicked on daily quests. Today's quests, push-ups times 0/100. Reward 100 experience. Straight punches times 0/100. Reward 100 experience. Kicks times 0/100. Reward 100 experience. Static lift 0/100 kilograms total. Reward 100 experience. Run 0/10 kilometers cumulative. Reward 100 experience. Completion. Bonus +1 free attribute point. 1 times recovery potion. Warning, failure to complete daily quests results in a penalty. Current penalty. Hold 2 starts in 0/057. Hyde's eyes widened. Wait, what the hell? The numbers blinked at the bottom of the daily quest window, like a countdown on a bomb. 0057, 0056. Wait, what the hell? Hyde's thoughts turned frantic. Penalty? What kind of penalty? The system window didn't elaborate. The line just kept ticking down. 0052. His mouth went dry. Sweat pricked the back of his neck. He tried tapping the text and swiping it aside, but his finger passed through the blue screen like smoke. "Hey!" He glared at the blue pane. "You can hear my thoughts, you creepy bastard. Explain what this is before it hits 0. Instead of an explanation, a different window unfolded. Adaptive override, adaptation complete. Counter skill. Generated, Predator's Respite, rank B, passive. On enemy kill, restore 50% of missing stamina. Chain kills within a brief window, grant reduced additional restoration. Stamina, 50%, he murmured. Every corpse was a breath of fresh air. On the street, that skill would have kept him standing. He wouldn't have blacked out next to Kai and Risa, but the countdown didn't care. 0039. He snapped his attention back to the daily quest panel. "I can't even move my legs," he hissed. "How am I supposed to do push-ups, kicks, or running?" No response, just the relentless change of numbers. 0034. "Fine," he muttered. "Do whatever you want, damn it." He closed the quest window and opened his main status panel. He had 5 unallocated points. He remembered the overturned car. No matter how hard he pushed, it hadn't budged. If he had more strength, maybe he could have flipped it. Then there was his stamina. He had blacked out because it ran out. 4 into strength, he thought. Strength, 6 to 10. Stat points, 5 to 1. A wave of warmth spread through his body. He felt a much better connection to his muscles. Last one. He looked over the remaining stats. Agility meant speed, but endurance meant stamina, how long he could move before his body shut down. Endurance, he decided. Endurance, 10 to 11. Stat points, 1 to 0. The penalty timer was still running, stubbornly unimpressed. 0018. "You're really going to do this," he whispered. At 0003, a new line popped up. Penalty holds. To transfer preparation in progress. His stomach dropped. Transfer where? Hey, no! There are people coming. Somewhere beyond the door, he heard the faint rhythm of approaching footsteps. Initiating transfer in 01. His eyes widened. No, don't! He swung his fist at the panel on instinct, but his hand just ghosted through the glowing text. 1 second, he was sitting upright in a hospital bed with paralyzed legs. The next, he was standing. His feet rested on a dark, reflective floor. That stretched out infinitely in all directions. Hyde spun around. The room was completely wrong. There were no walls. Geometric planes and lines of light hung in the air at impossible distances, sliding past each other. It felt like standing inside the guts of an enormous four-dimensional machine. He was trapped in a small box inside an infinity dimension. What the fuck? He breathed. It's like a cyber game lobby. A window slid into place right in front of him. Penalty space. Total, penalty holds. 2 duration per penalty. 15 minutes. Total session. Time, 30 minutes. Warning. Skill and stat enhancements are temporarily suppressed during penalty. His heart lurched. Suppressed? What do you mean? Another line etched itself underneath with infuriating calm. Note, external time compression factor. 1,000 times 30 minutes here equals 1.8 seconds in host's external environment. 1.8 seconds? He repeated in disbelief. Out there, nobody would even notice he was gone. The people coming wouldn't find an empty bed. But whatever nightmare was about to happen in here, it would happen to him alone. Why? He demanded. I only missed the quest because I was unconscious, you maniac. The pain ignored his complaint. A final line faded into view. Good luck surviving. Hyde stood alone in a shifting space. There was no proper floor. There was no proper ceiling. A sound like static building in an old speaker prickled his back. He turned and leaped away, as pixelated squares of light coalesced in the center of the void. Skeletons of light snapped together, filling with color and mass. In 3 heartbeats, a monster the size of a building stood before him. The beast was at least 10 meters tall, with a vaguely humanoid torso and long, elongated limbs. Its featureless skin was a smooth, wet gray, where its head should have been. There was only a blank oval with a vertical slit of red light slicing down the center. The giant tilted its head, and the red slit flared. Then, its massive hand came down like a hammer. Hyde's eyes couldn't even track the movement. In a fraction of a second, his bones crumpled, and his skull compressed. Then, he was standing again. He was back in the exact same spot. A second later, the perfect recollection of the brutal pain hit his mind all at once. His stomach lurched violently. He dropped to his knees and vomited, but the mess just floated on the reflective surface. His hands shook uncontrollably. I died, he gasped. I died. A shadow fell over him. The hand was already coming down again. This time, Hyde moved. He threw himself sideways on pure instinct. The giant hand slammed the ground, sending a silent ripple through space that made his teeth ache. Hyde rolled to his feet and drove a punch straight into the giant's knee. He tried to activate his abyssal scale carapace, but his skills were completely suppressed. His bare fist hit the skin, and a sharp lance of pain shot up his arm. The monster's body was harder than concrete. Hyde felt the knuckles in his hand crack. Before he could react, the giant's other hand swatted him away. Respawn. He came back standing, and the beast was already mid-motion. This time, he didn't vomit, but his throat spasmed with terror as the memory of his second death slammed into him. He checked the system interface. Only 2 minutes had passed. The third time, Hyde tried to run, but the space had no edges, no matter how fast his legs pumped. The dark expanse never changed, and the heavy footfalls behind him closed in too quickly. Impact. He was standing once again, and again, and again. He lost track after his 7th death. Die, return, and remember the pain. At first it was panic. Then it turned into a constant dread. He tried everything, rolling, playing dead, even leaping onto the incoming hand to climb its arm. It didn't matter. With his base stats and no skills, he was a helpless bug, seeing the massive shape blot out the sky again. Hyde raised his hands on reflex. A detached thought crossed his mind. Is this what Mom felt? Knowing you are completely helpless, but accepting the inevitable. By his 20th turn, something in him went completely quiet. His heart still raced. Rank fear was there, but a part of his mind began to calmly watch and catalog. The monster used the exact same movements every time. There was no variation. He realized how truly weak his body was without the system. It was a miracle he had killed 12 beasts at the gate. Without his unique class, he was nothing. Finally, the glowing blue text returned between deaths. Penalty session complete. Total penalty time, 30 minutes. Total deaths, 19. Hyde blinked, and he was suddenly back in the hospital bed. The same white ceiling stared down at him. The dead weight returned to his waist. His hand was still half raised toward the screen that had vanished. Out in the corridor, the footsteps were still approaching. Only 1.8 seconds had actually passed in reality. A sharp, ragged breath tore out of him. He clamped his teeth shut. His body was uninjured, but his mind perfectly remembered the agony of breaking 19 times. He opened the system window and saw his penalty holds were gone. He never wanted to experience that again. Suddenly, the sliding door hissed open. 2 figures stepped into the room.